In fact, let's take you now to Park Station. It is the biggest intermodal transport hub on the continent, with over 150,000 people moving through it every day for various reasons, such as shopping, banking, work and traveling. It is home to bus operators and terminals, trains, and adjacent to taxis and the Gautrain. Well, SABC News anchor Ayanda Nyathi is at the Johannesburg Park Station in Gauteng for us. Ayanda, of course, earlier on when we spoke to you, you were stationed outside the taxi rank. I see now behind you is that beautiful PRASA train. Of course, as we continue to report on the various modes of transport that many South Africans are choosing to move through to their destinations today. What are you seeing there where you are? And of course, what are you hearing?
Yeah, of course, it's a completely different environment. Nyathi, I could barely stand in one position at the taxi rank, which is just literally a couple of meters from where we are. Anybody who has a pretty clear understanding of the PRASA geography, so to speak, will know, of course, that you have to know where you're going in order to get into the right mode of transport and, of course, to make it there on time. We're currently now at the PRASA terminals, and, of course, one of the things that immediately stands out is the fact that it's not necessarily as busy. Officials telling us that in fact, we're seeing the off-peak period for trains in particular, at least those that are operating. In fact, a lot of the movement, insofar as rail is concerned, is still within the city. PRASA's challenges, let's call them, of course, are well documented when it comes, for example, to safeguarding rail for long-distance travel and many of the other issues that have really affected services, so to speak. Nonetheless, as you mentioned, I mean, this train literally just arrived, I'd say, about 5 minutes ago. Perhaps it's worth just giving you a much broader shot of what it looks like. We're told this is ferrying people, of course, out of the city at the moment. Many of them who had been relatively excited to get onto the train for quite some time now. It might leave at any moment now, and of course, once again, we're told this is all within the city so far. I would speak to some of the eager travelers, but my concern, of course, is that as soon as I step into the train, I might end up going to wherever they're headed, which I think is in Soweto. So probably not a good idea to engage some of them. But you know, traditionally speaking, Nyathi, there had been all manner of concerns, even to do with safety generally at Park Station, and that doesn't seem to be a problem since we've been arrived. There's been such a clear contingent of police officers who've certainly been able to accompany us as we move around Park Station, and even here the cleanliness is one of the things that certainly stand out. And so you really get a sense that promise to try get Park Station up and running again is headed in the right direction, although if you were to ask me, I'd say those who are in charge of the trains here would certainly want to see a whole lot more of these trains in operation to get PRASA back to its former glory. When we talk about logistics, for example, we know the huge impact it has on the economy as well. So that's the situation as it stands. Again, we're waiting for this train to move at any moment now, and as soon as it does, hopefully we'll be able to see it, Nyathi. But you certainly get the sense that the sense of busyness that exists, for example, for the buses and the taxis isn't necessarily seen here for rail.
You know, in fact, Ayanda, I want to just touch on that point of busyness. Earlier on, we heard you speaking, of course, to the spokesperson of Santaco. While we know that in the main across the country, what is the key focus for many authorities is the safety of travelers, making sure that everyone arrives safe in their destination. What the spokesperson said was very interesting in as far as saying, you know, they appreciate this time post-COVID that they are seeing so many people actually utilizing their services, which is positive news for many of the operators there. So I do get a sense of, you know, there is that relief from an economic perspective from the taxi industry at least.
And it's not just the taxis, Nyathi, it's across the different modes of transport. In many instances, we're getting a sense from operators that we're finally getting back to those pre-COVID-19 levels where people, quite frankly, especially around this time of the year, weren't afraid to step out and to move around. We know of the economic spin-off that this comes with, and Santaco, who we spoke to earlier, is certainly banking on that when they take stock of the past couple of weeks. In fact, even in AXA for airport airport company South Africa, speaking yesterday and a few weeks prior to that, had mentioned that part of what they're starting to see, of course, is a whole lot more activity around their terminals. And of course, what comes with that, Nyathi, is making sure that, at least insofar as taxis are concerned, people get into vehicles that will get them to their final destinations. I put that question to Santaco's spokesperson, who actually mentioned to us that they still are having challenges, at least insofar as making sure that the vehicles that are being used are roadworthy. We posed that question and several others in that discussion a short while ago. Take a listen.
It's a very exciting time in terms of the work that we do. You remember the last time you and I spoke, I said to you, we're on a recovery basis. And so when the taxi rank is buzzing like this, it means that there's hope, there's light at the end of the tunnel. So far, we're seeing so many of our operators, especially those that are working on the ground, being very busy. I was impressed. As soon as we walked in, they've got placards that literally speak to any commuter to say, if you want a taxi that's going to Eastern Cape, you want a taxi that's going to Limpopo, this is the way that you go. So we're happy also because there's a lot of law enforcement visibility. It tells us that law enforcement understands that it is a heightened time. Criminals are seeing an opportunity. The colleague you spoke to earlier was saying the same thing. So far we're quite happy. Business is doing well. We're not resting, obviously, but I mean, it comes with the job.
Yeah. You speak about business doing well. Often the focus has been the extent to which we're getting back to pre-COVID-19 numbers. Are you starting to see signs of that?
We are. It's slowly but surely, especially for the long distance operations. In any way, we expect it around this time. So it's getting to work very well. But obviously, the demand is also high. So we've had to also encourage most of the long distance associations to start working with those that work in the short distances, the local trips and them. Because you would imagine these drivers have been up since essentially December started. So we're doing that with them as well. They're getting assistance from those that work the local trips because the demand is a lot less. But yes, we think that after this, many of our operators would have recouped. But you would know the demand is much higher. Even also the extent to which they've suffered is a lot more. But at least it gives some sense of cushioning.
Yeah. Speaking of the operators, for better or for worse, people see taxis in particular ways in our country. And a big concern is typically around the roadworthiness of the vehicles. How much of a handle do you feel you have as Santaco, as an organization, in order to ensure people get to where they need to safely?
Look, this is a very thorny issue. You know that at some point there was a cartoonist who was even calling some of our taxis driving caskets, which was very disheartening. The reality is because finances are so hard and the taxi industry is at a high risk. So when you're paying a monthly installment for a minibus, you're paying something between 18 and 20,000 rand. So it's a lot of money. We had hoped that the taxi recapitalization program would come in handy with that allowance that they give for you to scrap an old car. But there are a number of issues that has still not been resolved in that particular regard. The timeline of the vehicles that really can be scrapped still ends at 2006. There are too many more cars that have come after that period that also need to be scrapped. That condition is still being discussed at that high level. So it's concerning, but there isn't much that can be done at the moment, because even when you encourage members to say buy new cars, they're telling you, but what do I have to do? There's so much that is required in terms of the finances. But even the amount of money that you get for the scrapping, it's just over 150,000 rand. When you compare that to the monthly installment I've just spoken to you about for a new vehicle, it's incredibly difficult. But look, the Minister of Transport recently said that they are looking at varied ways in which they can de-risk the industry, inclusive of talking to the banks to say, how do we reduce this monthly installments? We've got hope, but I think we're just saying to everyone, look, we're not oblivious to the reality that some of our vehicles are not in a good state, but we're working hard alongside government and other relevant entities, inclusive of the private sector, banking to be precise, to get to some solution.
Yeah, and so they have it, Rebecca Phala there speaking for Santaco, and in fact she's made important concessions about ways in which they're still working to iron through some of those issues to do with roadworthiness. We're still, of course, stationed here at one of the terminals for the trains that are in operation at the Park Station in the city. And joining us now, actually, as we have been stationed here, is the CEO for Rail, that's Nelson Malefane, here at PRASA, to just get us a sense of how things have been running. Great to see you, CEO. Thanks very much much indeed for coming through to chat to us. Let me just get a sense from you, given the demands that come with this time of year, how happy you are. What's your sense of how things have been running so far?
Thank you, and good morning to your viewers. Look, today is the 20th of December, one of our excitement day. And it's an excitement because we also have a safety campaign today, where we are actually making an awareness to our users that they need to be careful. It's that time of the year where people are pickpocketing and all these other things. And most important, also to encourage the users of the trains to make sure that they use the train safely. People are running, rushing, want to buy and all those kind of things. Then there's other area where the school kids are not attending the schools anymore. What we have observed is that they are throwing the trains with the stones. And we are saying to the parents, please discourage the kids to throw the trains with the stones. This is our assets, we need them. January we need to make sure that we get to work, get to school. If they damage them, then they will spend a lot of time in the workshops and all these kind of things. And one other thing that is important is that you can see that people are comfortable with these trains when it comes to safety element. We've got the security on board that ensures that people are comfortable, they are safe, they can relax whenever they are inside the train. So this is a really interesting time for us. And one other area that we need to also touch on, we have seen quite a lot of incidents that happens where people are crossing the railway lines. We are encouraging people to use the bridges. If the situation forces you to cross the line, stop and observe if the train is not coming and then cross when it is safely. But we are discouraging that because there are bridges, pedestrian bridges. We have also the road bridges that people can use. But people, for some reason, they decide to take the shortcuts and all these kind of things. So this is the area where we encourage people at this time of the year to be careful because we want to see everyone celebrating the Christmas. We want to see our customers coming back to the system again.
Yeah.
That's
We've seen, I think this is the second train since we've been stationed here. For people who are hoping to use the service, what kind of routes can they anticipate they might be able to have access to?
Look, so far we are going to scale down. I must emphasize that point, that for the commuter services specifically, this is our last busy day. As of next week, we'll see that the frequencies will reduce a bit because it's that time when everything is closing down until we come back in the first week of January again. Now, the key important area about this center where we are, Park Station, it's where we integrate all modes of transport. You get buses here, taxis here, connecting the commuter trains, connecting the long distance trains. So those are the kind of services that we actually get. Now, I can safely say to you, per day we facilitate around 150,000 people through this facility. But when this facility functions at its full capacity, it's almost around 300,000 people that are using this facility on a daily basis.
Sure. That is a huge number, especially when you consider when you compare it to AXA, they're anticipating 300,000 people over a number of days. So that really does give us a bit of perspective. And as we speak there, I can see the trains behind us is about to take off. I suppose this is the final call for people who are trying to get through. But I mentioned earlier, and you touched on this too, that PRASA essentially is not only concerned about the trains, but the different modes of transport as well. It's a huge operation to make sure that the people who are passing through here do so safely, especially because in the past people have been worried about the infrastructure and the level of safety. What can you tell us about some of the interventions you've put in place to get it to a point where it's working now, because we were upstairs earlier on and there are visible improvements?
Look, I must say that it is true. At some point we went through element of theft and vandalism in the system. So we have recovered that, and Park Station was also highly affected. I mean, a lot of the retailers completely took off and left the place. But you can see they came back in numbers. The place has been revitalized. People are excited. They feel free to walk through this facility. And even those that are using this facility, you can see how relaxed they are, sitting there waiting for other modes of transport. Because at times when people come to this facility, they don't connect immediately. You'll find that some of them, they come and they need to connect in the afternoon. So it's a safe facility for them to be able to shop around. Some they go to the town, come back, be able to relax in this facility. So that's basically what it says, that this facility is a safe facility. And if you look at the security as well, it's visible to show that definitely we are protecting this facility for the people.
All right. Nelson Malefane, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. appreciate the time. Nelson Malefane joining us really at the last minute, so we appreciate his willingness to speak to us. He, of course, is the CEO for rail here for PRASA, but of course, once again, PRASA not only focuses on the rail itself, but has an interest in ensuring that the entire institution, which houses these different modes of transport, runs as efficiently as possible. Concessions there that, of course, there have been challenges in the past, but I think it'd be completely remiss, if not unfair, not to mention the very clear improvements that we've been able to spot, given, of course, the reputation, some people might say, that Park Station might have had not too far back.
The most important information that came out there is just how many South Africans utilize that service. The train specifically saying that there 150,000 people utilize the trains on a daily basis, saying that peak, at capacity, that number can rise to 300,000. That just, tells you just how important this service is, for PRASA. But thank you so much for that reporting. Of course, Ayanda Nyathi coming to us live there from Park Station, just giving us the various modes of transport, the points there that are being serviced at Park Station. Already we've understand that from the Transport Minister yesterday, just that there's already been a spike in traffic accidents during this festive season, which is something that is of concern. And this is despite a number of those road safety campaigns across the country.